The Clue Club's van rumbled down the old cobblestone streets of New Orleans, the city alive with the spirit of jazz and the scent of Creole cooking wafting through the air. The vibrant colors of the French Quarter blurred past as they made their way to the heart of the city's oldest district. Dylan leaned out the window, taking in the sights. "You know, they say the beignets here can make you see the future," he joked, earning a round of chuckles from the gang. Sophie rolled her eyes playfully. "We're not here for pastries, Dylan. We're here to help my great-uncle with his voodoo problem." Buddy, with his nose pressed against the window, seemed more interested in the aromas of the city than the conversation. As they pulled up to a grand, albeit slightly run-down plantation house, an elderly man with a kind face and a walking cane greeted them. "Welcome to New Orleans, Clue Club. I'm Uncle Henri, and I'm mighty grateful y'all could come down." The gang unloaded, stretching their legs and taking in the sight of the majestic home, its shutters creaking softly in the breeze. Uncle Henri led them inside, where the walls were adorned with masks and paintings that spoke of the city's rich history. "I reckon you'll want to hear about the strange goings-on," he said, his voice tinged with worry. Sophie nodded. "Yes, please tell us everything." Uncle Henri sighed. "It started a few weeks back. Strange symbols appearing overnight, objects moving on their own, and an eerie presence felt throughout the house. I've lived here all my life, and I ain't never seen anything like it." Max, ever the logical one, asked, "Have you noticed any pattern to these occurrences?" Uncle Henri shook his head. "None whatsoever. It's as if the spirits themselves have become restless." Dylan, with a mischievous grin, couldn't resist. "Maybe they just want to jazz things up a bit," the group laughed, the tension easing slightly, but the mystery of the voodoo shadows had only just begun. The night had fallen over the plantation, a silver crescent moon hanging low in the sky. Uncle Henry's offer to stay was met with eager nods. The Clue Club was always ready for an adventure, especially in a house as intriguing as this. Dylan, with a wagging Buddy at his heels, made a beeline for the kitchen. "I got a bone to pick with the fridge," he quipped, hoping for a midnight snack. Sophie, Chloe, and Max made their way up the grand staircase, the old wood groaning under their steps. The air was thick with the scent of aged oak and a hint of something more exotic, perhaps incense. As they reached the top, a low, rhythmic chanting seeped through the walls, sending a shiver down their spines. "Do you hear that?" Chloe whispered, her voice barely above the haunting melody. Max peered out of the window at the end of the hallway, where a flickering light caught his attention. "There's a fire out there," he said, pointing to the distant glow. "And I think there are people. It could be some sort of ritual." Sophie's eyes lit up with curiosity. "We should check it out. It might be connected to what's been happening here." Uncle Henri, who had followed them upstairs, nodded gravely. "Be careful, children. The bayou at night is no place for the faint of heart." With a determined look, Sophie led the way, her voice steady. "We'll be cautious, Uncle Henri. We've faced the unknown before." Chloe, clutching her flashlight, added, "And we've always figured it out. This time won't be any different." The Clue Club, minus Dylan and Buddy, ventured into the night, the chanting growing louder with each step towards the mysterious fire. As they approached, the outlines of people dancing around the flames became visible, their shadows casting long, twisting shapes on the ground. Max murmured, "This is more than just a simple gathering. There's a purpose to this dance." Sophie nodded, her gaze fixed on the figures. "Let's get closer, but stay out of sight. We need to understand what's happening before we jump to any conclusions." The Clue Club crouched in the underbrush, watching the ritual unfold, unaware that back at the house, Dylan and Buddy were about to stumble upon a clue of their own. The back door creaked as the Clue Club slipped out, the humid night air wrapping around them like a thick blanket. The distant chanting was a siren call through the dense woods, guiding them to the secretive gathering. Meanwhile, inside the grand plantation house, Dylan and Buddy, bellies full and spirits high, roamed the dimly lit corridors. A sudden gust of wind sent shadows dancing across the walls, causing Dylan to jump. "Whoa, Buddy, this place has more shadows than a sundial convention at high noon," he joked nervously, before ducking into a closet to avoid another phantom silhouette. In the woods, the ritual was in full swing. The Clue Club, hidden among the trees, watched as the VooDoo Priestess held aloft a doll that bore an uncanny resemblance to Uncle Henry. Max's voice was a hushed whisper. "That's not just any doll, that's voodoo." Chloe's eyes were wide with fear and fascination. "And that's Uncle Henry's tie on the doll. This is serious." The priestess, her eyes closed as she chanted, suddenly snapped them open, her gaze piercing the darkness. The Clue Club didn't wait to see if she had spotted them. They turned and fled, leaves and twigs crunching underfoot as they raced back to the safety of the house. "That was too close," Max panted, his joke a nervous attempt to lighten the mood. "I think we just got a pointed reminder to stick together." Back inside, they found Dylan and Buddy emerging from the closet, the former trying to play it off coolly. "Just checking for, dust bunnies. This place could use a good spring cleaning." Sophie quickly filled them in on what they had seen. The gravity of the situation was clear. Uncle Henry was in danger, and the Clue Club had to act fast. The Clue Club's bedrooms were havens of antique furniture and the soft glow of moonlight through gauzy curtains. Dylan, still jittery from the evening's escapades, mistook a coat hanger draped with a white sheet for a spectral visitor. "Geez, even the furniture's trying to spook us," he muttered to Buddy, who tilted his head as if agreeing. Sophie, Chloe, and Max settled into their rooms, the weight of the night's discoveries pressing on them. As the fire from the ritual dimmed and the figures dispersed, Sophie's sharp eyes caught movement in the shadows. "Guys, look!" she whispered urgently. Uncle Henry, appearing suddenly in the doorway, his face etched with concern, announced, "It's beginning, kids." They all gathered in the grand living room, the heart of the house, as shadows flitted across the windows and the lights flickered like a Morse code of the damned. Voices, ethereal and indistinct, murmured just beyond the edge of understanding, sending shivers down their spines. Uncle Henri, usually the epitome of Southern stoicism, stood rigid, his eyes wide with a fear that seemed to paralyze him. Dylan, ever the joker even in the face of danger, quipped, "Guess this house doesn't need a home theater system with surround sound like this, huh?" But seeing Uncle Henri's distress, he quickly added, "Sorry, Uncle Henri, just trying to lighten the mood." The Clue Club knew they were in the thick of it now. Whatever was happening, it was more than just superstition. It was as real and dangerous as the swampy mists that clung to the bayou. The night's eerie events seemed to drain the energy from everyone, and one by one, the Clue Club members succumbed to a restless sleep, the kind that leaves you more tired than when you closed your eyes. Morning light filtered through the curtains, casting a serene glow that felt at odds with the previous night's terror. Uncle Henri, already up and bustling about the kitchen, was a comforting sight. The aroma of sizzling bacon, fresh coffee, and fluffy pancakes filled the air. Dylan and Buddy were the first to appear, lured by the promise of a hearty breakfast. "Smells like heaven after a night of ghost dodging," Dylan joked, rubbing his stomach. Sophie, Chloe, and Max joined them, their spirits lifted by the smell of the food. They gathered around the large dining table, laden with dishes that promised to satisfy even Buddy's insatiable appetite. "Uncle Henry, you sure know how to make a breakfast that could wake the dead," Chloe said with a grin, earning a chuckle from the others. Max added, "If I ate like this every day, I'd need to run laps around the bayou just to fit through the door." They ate their fill, the food and daylight bolstering their courage. With their bellies full and their resolve strengthened, they discussed their plan to head into the city. They needed to gather clues and understand the voodoo that seemed to be targeting Uncle Henry and his home. "All right, team, let's hit the city. I've got a feeling we're going to crack this one wide open," Sophie declared, her leadership never in question. Dylan, wiping syrup from his chin, quipped, "Let's just hope the only spirits we meet today are the ones telling us where to find the best beignets." With laughter following them out the door, the Clue Club set off for the city, ready to unravel the mystery of the voodoo shadows. The Clue Club's van rolled to a stop outside the New Orleans Historical Museum. The building, a testament to the city's rich past, loomed with an air of silent knowledge. Inside, the air was cool and musty, filled with the scent of old books and artifacts. They were greeted by a historian, Mr. Beauregard, whose family had been in New Orleans for generations. "Ah, the Henry estate," he mused, stroking his white beard. "That land has a history as deep and tangled as the roots of our bayou cypress." Sophie leaned in. "We're trying to understand some disturbances that started when my uncle bought the land." Mr. Beauregard nodded, his eyes narrowing. "That would be the land that once belonged to the LaRouche family, a name as old as the city itself. They were known to practice voodoo, but they were peaceful, kept to their traditions, and the community respected that." "LaRouche," Max repeated thoughtfully. "So, what changed when my uncle bought the land?" "The LaRouche family fell on hard times, lost much of their property. But that back 10 acres, it was sacred to them, a place of spirits and ancestors. They wouldn't sell, not until they had no other choice," Mr. Beauregard explained. Sophie's eyes widened. "That's when everything started happening. It seems the land belonged to the LaRouche family for over 150 years. The historian gave them a grave look. "Some say you can't just own land like that. It comes with obligations to the past, to the spirits." With this new knowledge, the Clue Club thanked Mr. Beauregard and headed back to the van. The drive back to the plantation was quiet, each member lost in thought over the historian's words. "What if the LaRouche family's ancestors think we're trespassing on sacred ground?" Chloe pondered aloud. "We need to find out more about the LaRouche family and what this land meant to them," Sophie decided. "Maybe there's a way to make peace." The sun was beginning to dip low in the sky as they arrived back at Uncle Henry's plantation, the mystery of the voodoo shadows deepening with the approaching night. The evening air was thick with the scent of jasmine as the Clue Club, along with Uncle Henry, made their way through the dense foliage that bordered the Henry estate and the LaRouche property. The sky was painted with streaks of orange and purple as the sun began to set, casting long shadows that seemed to dance between the trees. Dylan, ever the joker, nudged Uncle Henry with a grin. "So, when's the next feast? I'm sure Buddy and I could use a second round." Laughter echoed softly among the group, easing the tension that had built up over the day's discoveries. But as they approached the LaRouche main house, the mood shifted. The house stood silent, a grand structure that seemed to hold countless secrets. Vines crept up its sides, and the windows were dark, like the eyes of someone long lost in thought. Uncle Henri cleared his throat, his usual jovial demeanor replaced by a somber tone. "We need to speak with the Priestess LaRouche. It's time we understood the full story." The group was greeted at the door by a woman with an air of authority, her eyes reflecting the wisdom of her lineage. She introduced herself as Marie LaRouche, the current matriarch and VooDoo Priestess of the family. Uncle Henry was direct. "We've come to understand that the disturbances on my property might be connected to the land's history and your family's past." Marie nodded, her expression unreadable. "The land you speak of is more than just soil and trees. It's a sacred place where the veil between worlds is thin." Sophie stepped forward. "We want to help, to find a way to live in harmony with the land's history and your traditions. Marie considered them for a moment, then gestured for them to follow her into the house. Then come, we have much to discuss. As they entered the LaRouche home, the Clue Club felt the weight of history around them, the walls whispering tales of the past. Tonight, they would learn the true nature of the voodoo shadows that haunted the Henri estate. The interior of the LaRouche home was like stepping into another era, with antique furnishings and walls adorned with historical artifacts. The air was heavy with the scent of incense, and the dim light from the candles cast an otherworldly glow. Marie LaRouche's sudden transformation was startling. Her face, twisted in anguish, seemed to channel the voices of countless ancestors, their pain and anger palpable in her scream. "This land is sacred," she cried out. "It is where our ancestors walk with us." Dylan, usually the one to break tension with a joke, found no words this time. He and Buddy, the brave dog now less so, retreated behind the others, sensing the gravity of the situation. Uncle Henri, his usual easygoing nature replaced by a firm resolve, stepped forward. "Stop this, Marie!" His voice boomed through the room, commanding attention. "We must talk, please." The room fell silent, the echoes of Marie's outcry still lingering. Her face relaxed, the contorted expression giving way to one of weary resignation. "Yes, Henri," she said, her voice now calm. "We shall talk." She led them to a sitting room where they all took seats. The Clue Club exchanged uneasy glances, unsure of what would come next. Marie began to speak, her voice soft, but filled with a strength that resonated in the quiet room. "Our families have both been here for generations. The land you now own, Henri, was once a place where our people could gather, connect with the spirits, and celebrate our heritage." Uncle Henri nodded, his expression somber. "I was unaware of its significance when I purchased it. I only saw an opportunity to expand my estate." Marie's gaze held Henri's. "It is more than just land. It is a part of us, a part of our soul. When you began to change it, to make it your own, you disturbed the spirits that have always found solace there." The Clue Club listened intently, the pieces of the puzzle beginning to fall into place. "We must find a way to coexist," Sophie suggested. "There has to be a balance that respects both the living and the spirits of the past." Marie considered Sophie's words, then nodded slowly. "Perhaps there is a way, but it will require understanding, respect, and a willingness to embrace the traditions that have been a part of this land for centuries." Uncle Henry leaned forward. "Tell us what we need to do. We will listen, and we will learn." As the night wore on, Marie shared the history of the land, the customs of her ancestors, and the rituals that kept the balance between the physical and spiritual worlds. The Clue Club, along with Uncle Henri, realized that this mystery was not one to be solved, but understood and honored. The atmosphere in the LaRouche home had shifted from one of tension to a tentative peace. Dylan, with Buddy in tow, had slipped away to the kitchen, lured by the irresistible aroma of freshly baked bread. Their foray was cut short by the stern gaze of an older man entering the kitchen, his look sharp enough to send them scurrying back to the safety of the group. Dylan leaned down to whisper a joke to Buddy, who wagged his tail in silent laughter. Back in the sitting room, Uncle Henri was making amends. "Marie, my intentions were never to disrupt the spirits or your traditions," he said earnestly. "I wanted to plant wildflowers at the back of the house, nothing more. I believe we can come to an agreement." Marie listened, her expression softening. Henri continued, "If the land remains untouched, wild as you say, and available for your rituals when needed, would that suffice? I'll ensure this agreement is upheld by my family for generations to come." Marie's eyes glistened with unshed tears, a smile breaking through. "Yes, Henri, that would be more than enough." The room filled with a sense of relief. Smiles were exchanged, the earlier animosity replaced by a newfound understanding. Dylan, never one to miss a beat, piped up with a well-timed joke, lightening the mood further. "Guess we won't be needing any ghost-busting equipment after all, huh?" Laughter echoed through the room, and with the conflict resolved, the Clue Club felt a collective sense of accomplishment. They had not only solved a mystery, but helped bridge a gap between the present and the past, between different ways of life. "Let's head home, gang," Sophie said, a contented smile on her face. They said their goodbyes to Marie and her family, promising to visit again under happier circumstances. As they walked back to Uncle Henri's house under the starlit sky, they felt the magic of New Orleans, a city where history, culture, and the supernatural seemed to coexist in every cobblestone and corner. And so, another mystery was put to rest by the Clue Club, with the promise of more adventures to come. Back in the familiar confines of Pineview, the Clue Club found themselves once again at their favorite haunt, burgers and fries. The air was filled with the sizzle of the grill and the laughter of friends reunited. Dylan kicked off the round of jokes. "Why don't voodoo priests like to write checks? Because they prefer to use cursive." Chloe chimed in with her own, "What do you call it when a voodoo doll has a cold? A stuffy nose." Max couldn't resist adding, "Why did the voodoo doll start a blog? To give people a little pierce of his mind." Even Buddy seemed to be in high spirits, his tail wagging to the rhythm of the laughter. The cook, with a mock, stern look, emerged from the kitchen. "You know, kids, I almost had to shut this place down with you all off solving mysteries." But the twinkle in his eye betrayed his jest. Just then, an older woman passed by the diner's window. Her resemblance to Marie Larouche was uncanny, down to the knowing smile she offered before continuing on her way. "That was weird," Dylan remarked, his brow furrowed. Sophie leaned closer to the glass, squinting. "Was that, you know who?" "Can't be," Max said, shaking his head. "Marie's in New Orleans, right?" Before they could ponder further, the jukebox sprang to life, filling the diner with the upbeat strains of a classic tune. The momentary mystery was swept away by the music and the camaraderie. Laughter and the clinking of milkshake glasses melded into the perfect backdrop for their post-adventure celebration. And as the evening wore on, the Clue Club reveled in the joy of the moment, the magic of their journey, and the anticipation of the next mystery that surely awaited them in the heart of Pineview.